Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the 5 greatest Dvorak conductors. Now, this is an interesting list because people generally don't think of Dvorak as one of those composers who has special needs when it comes to conducting him. His music is so mellifluous, so tuneful, so lovely, but, it helps to have somebody who has real feel for the music as opposed to somebody who doesn't. And Dvorak is different from other composers. He has his own special style. And some conductors adapt to it really well and others don't. I'll give you a case in point that I think illustrates what I'm talking about. Nicholas Harnoncourt. Now, Nicholas Harnoncourt, for my purposes, didn't do enough Dvorak to make the list, although he did marvelous Dvorak what he did. He did symphonies 7, 8, 9, the tone poems, the piano concerto, and the Slavonic dances, and he did them magnificently. He really, you might want to put him on your list, actually. But his Dvorak was fresh and lively and full of character and cohesive. And really, I think because it was so colorful, he was able to let the music speak and keep it moving in a happy and enjoyable way. His Brahms was weird because people always put Dvorak and Brahms together, and you figure, well, if you do one well, you'll do the other well. Well, not so. Harnoncourt's Brahms was affected and mannered and strangely balanced, and because it was Brahms, has a reputation of being an intellectual composer. And so conductors tend to use Brahms to show how smart they are. Nobody ever accused Dvorak of being an intellectual. Mind you, he wasn't an idiot. He wasn't stupid. But he wasn't one of those people who came from a tradition where he had to show just like how wonderful his counterpoint was, or, making a virtue out of austerity and all that. He didn't have any of those hang-ups that people get stuck on when they do Brahms. So for that reason, people generally don't think you need anything to be able to do Dvorak really well. But you do. You need to let the music sing. You need to have a really good sense of rhythm. You need to have a really good feel for orchestral color. And you do need to be able to create, a cohesive overall shape to a movement when Dvorak's letting the form hang rather loosely, which he sometimes does. So there are, special qualities. And here are 5 conductors who really got it. Number 1 was Witold Rowicki. Now, Rowicki was a very, very fine conductor, and it was ironic because he did a complete Dvorak symphony cycle on Philips with other works. The only weak performance in the whole batch was the 7th, because it's the most Brahmsian, and if you try and play it like Brahms, it does not work. But it's not a terrible 7th, by the way. It's just a little bit dark. But the thing that's interesting about Rowicki's Dvorak is that it was issued on Philips at the same time as the Kertész cycle was coming out on Decca. So everybody ignored it, but it couldn't be more different. It's very quick. First of all, his tempos are very fresh and lively. I mean, surprisingly sprightly. Very different from Kertész, who's much more relaxed. The sonics are great. He's got the same orchestra as Kertész. It's a wonderful Dvorak cycle, and it just goes to show, he had an approach that was really personal and different from everybody else's, and it got virtually no credit and no attention, and it's absolutely marvelous. So we have to include Rowicki, number 1. Number 2, Vaclav Neumann. Neumann with the Czech Phil did 2 cycles, one analog, one digital. The analog, I think, is slightly better on account of its greater warmth sonically. The performances are extremely similar. They're very, very good, natural and rhythmically sharp, and really, really, really beautiful. And you have the very, very considerable bonus of having the Czech Philharmonic along from the ride, and so you get the idiomatic and authentic Czech tradition in that music, which is really important to hear and to know. So the analog cycle is in that multi-disc set that Superphone put out of like all the major Dvorak works, grouped by orchestral works and 2 volumes of orchestral works, symphonies and concertos and other orchestral pieces, and then chamber music, and string quartets and choral works and things like that, piano works. So that's the analog cycle. It's in like the purple box. That's the one you should get. But if you have to get the digital cycle, it's still very good. And it's not badly recorded at all. But it's just a little bit early digital glary. They've cleaned it up a little bit, I think, since. But I still think that the early cycle is the one to get. So Neumann is definitely one of them. Rafael Kubelik is another who's legendarily famous. Kubelik did not like the early Dvorak symphonies, like 1, 2, 3, 4. He really was much more partial to the later ones. But he did all kinds of great Dvorak too. I mean, the symphonies with the Berlin Phil are very, very good. There's some stunning performances in that box. 5, 6, 8, just marvelous. The New World was the reference recording for many, many, many years. And then he did a great Slavonic dances with Bavarian Radio. He did all the tone poems. He did most of the major overtures, and other tone poemy type pieces. He really spent a good bit of his career, conducting Dvorak, when he did it supremely well. So definitely Kubelik. Kertész was the one who got flogged the most because he was on Decca with the LSO, and so Gramophone and the British critics were roundly behind Kertész. As well they should have been. It's a very fresh and spontaneous sounding cycle, relaxed in tempo, with balances that favor the woodwinds over the strings. Kertész also did a substantial bit of other Dvorak stuff, including a good chunk of tone poems and the Wind Serenade and things like that. And he also did the Requiem, which was a big deal back in the day, and it's still a glorious recording of the Requiem. It's absolutely fabulous. So his Dvorak definitely is up there in the Dvoraktheon, the pantheon of Dvorakitude, or whatever you want to call it. Excellent, excellent work. And last but not least, Charles Mackerras, the patron saint of Czech music. Of course, he's more famous for his Janacek, but he also did a lot of Martinu, and he did a lot of Dvorak. He did symphonies 6, 7, 8, 9, and a host of other shorter works, the symphonic variations, the legends, the Slavonic dances, the tone poems, with mostly Czech orchestras, either the Prague Radio or Czech Philharmonic. Wonderful performances all. He did multiple versions of the late symphonies, 7, 8, 9, which are absolutely gorgeous. I mean, first class. Mackerras really could do no wrong in Czech music, or almost anything else he touched. But he was certainly one of the great exponents of that repertoire, and he made a fabulous recording of Rusalka. I mean, last but certainly not least. Dvorak's operas get very, very little play or attention. I mean, Neumann also did a fabulous Rusalka. They both did, and they are marvelous performances. So, there's really a very good range of Dvorak in this list of 5 conductors, and I really look forward to seeing your list. Just make sure that they did a goodly body of work, minimally the last 3 symphonies plus some other stuff, because I could think of quite a few who would fit that description. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.